Welcome to the Intrazone, a show about the Microsoft 365 Intelligent Intranet. I'm Mark Cashman, and I'm running this intro solo as Chris is busy with some Ignite prep of what I guarantee you'll love to hear more about October 12th, 2022. So hold your horses on that. But Chris was able to join us for the main interview segment, so have no fear. Chris is here soon. On today's episode, we'll hear from Sean Emam, who is our principal GPM for all data centers, and Jon Farmer, our lead data center product marketing manager. We highlight news about the recent opening of a new data center in Qatar and the value of operating Microsoft data centers at scale across various product groups, partners, and ultimately out to customers worldwide. You're going to hear more about the history and the design that goes behind our Go Local efforts, choosing locations and the focus on sustainability across all data centers to enable great business impact with clean energy and sustainable practices intact at every turn. So you'll hear about what we do in the data centers, and it's a very current look at what we're doing in one new data center, but also a dive into data center practices if you have interest in what we do in the data centers to run these great services, more than just Microsoft 365. It really gets into, of course, what we do with Azure and the intent of us providing great services through great excellence at the data center layer. In the past, we've talked a lot to IT about the value of Microsoft running the data center for them. So on their behalf, doing that work in the cloud. The original pitch was we can do it in a way that you can't at scale, and of course save you a lot of the headache of running bare metal servers and the uptime and the reliability and just keeping up to speed with great technology within the data center. So what I really liked in what you'll hear Jon and Sean describe a lot more about was that innovation in scale and performance and sustainability that puts a finer point on how the Microsoft data center footprint truly consumes much less than the overall collective of what our customers do if they were all doing it themselves. The more that is on something like taking the bus system versus everybody driving their own car is really the approach. If we can minimize the impact, but also increase the business value, that really was the goal. And it really is an interesting perspective to hear. Not only are we running very large data centers that can house a lot of our customers, but we're doing it in a way that is hopefully good for everybody in the way that they have their sustainable practices, but also just up-leveling what it is IT teams can do for their business, moving from managing servers to managing the business and being a closer part of that. The other thing before we get into the interview, just I thought was an interesting thing when you think of the broader data center footprint, and you start to see how we not only stand up really great data centers that have really extreme focus on good sustainable practice, great performance, great scalability, and of course security. But along that backbone is all of the content services and product and apps across Microsoft 365. And as you'll hear, inclusive of Azure and of course different offerings from Power Platform, running on that same backbone means this is something that is then offered through all regions, offered through all data centers. The outreach to not only where you access your content, but how you access it is optimized month over month as we improve our practices for our data centers. And just to put a finer pin on it, that then means it's true for your SharePoint-backed intranet, your OneDrive core experiences powering all file sharing experiences. And that means sharing experiences in OneDrive and SharePoint and Teams and Yammer and the new Stream experience on SharePoint. And then when you look at apps like Teams, that means your collaboration, your calls, your meetings. A lot of where we land Viva offerings is now on the backbone of Teams, but put on that backbone of not just the product and the platform, but through those data centers. So optimizing at every angle the way that you access content, the way you communicate with your peers, your customers, your partners, it is at the end of the day very much based on how we can optimize the approach to what we do in the data center and how you access it. And of course, the security, the reliability, even the extent of how you layer on your own elements of additional security, governance. It is all there, and it really does start at the data center layer. So, without further ado, to you and you and you, here is our interview with Sean Emam and Jon Farmer about today's data center announcement in the Qatari Peninsula and the overall approach to data center excellence throughout the year. So now it's time to go beyond Mark and Chris and enter the data center zone in the interzone. It's my pleasure to welcome Sean and Jon, both focused on data centers. Jon and Sean, welcome to the interzone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
So before we get started, Jon, we'll start with you, and then Sean, layer in similar. We just want to know that little who you are and what you do at Microsoft. Jon.
Well, thanks first, Chris and Mark, for inviting us to participate in the intrazone or the data center zone today. My name is Jon Farmer. I'm part of the product marketing organization at Microsoft in Modern Work. And within Modern Work, I focus on all of our global data centers and what we do with them and how they benefit customers and ensuring that we have a good offering to meet customer requirements.
Very nice. And your peer and counterpart in, I just want to say, all things data center, all data centers. Sean, you're going to have to qualify this one for us. What is your role at Microsoft?
Yeah, so I'm Sean Emam. I'm the engineering lead for the M365 build-out expansion into new markets. And I've started this program back in 2014, and I'm still riding strong, moving it forward to new countries.
I know we've been growing at a clip. I hope there's still new markets left for us.
Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely. There's still some blue water out there.
Actually, I think that was Project Natick, the one that is under the oceans.
Yeah.
Well, maybe we can save that till end as a trivial point. So besides going underwater later, we want to stay above ground in a very specific part of the world and the ground that I want to let you say that. Maybe, Sean, you can tell us. Today is a new milestone in the context of your growth and moving into new data center regions. Can you share a little bit of what is today's news?
Yeah, so we are announcing the launch of Qatar Microsoft 365 local data center region, which is our new region in that country. And with it, we are actually sim shipping both M365 and Azure in that market. So it's a big engineering accomplishment for us. And also, I'll let Jon talk about what does it mean from a marketing perspective.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very exciting milestone for us. The 16th data center that we've opened, what we term as a local country data center region. So it's not just one data center, but it's actually a region. And we'll cover a little bit more about what that means over time. But it's exciting in serving the needs of that country, but not just that country, but also regional customers that want to have their data closer to where they operate.
And Sean, if this is number 16, can you give us a little minute or two on getting to the 16th one? A little bit of the data center journey you said since 2014, since you've been involved?
Prior to 2014, we were serving our customers through three macro regions, one in North America, another one in Europe, and the last one in Asia Pacific. So all countries were mapped to these three regional data centers. What we heard from our customers were that there are certain customer compliance requirements for data residency, specifically for key workloads like Exchange Online, SharePoint Online, and OneDrive, dealing with your mail content, sites, and documents, that the preference was for this data to be kept within the country with no copies of that data outside. And that would enable the segment of customers that are considered restricted markets in finance, public sector, healthcare, and other segments that are market specific to come to our cloud. So we evaluated that, and Japan was the first country we considered. Our experience in Japan was successful. We saw that we saw good adoption from the customers, and it appeared that we were meeting these segments' needs. And we expanded to 16 other markets that we talked about. Now, specifically what it means is that Microsoft Cloud Infrastructure has over 160 data centers and 8 sites hosting millions of servers worldwide. What we've done is, on top of this global infrastructure, we're deploying these local data centers like the one that we started in 2014 in Japan. And the benefit is that these local data centers are connected to our global cloud with the additional benefit of data stored in country, meeting the compliance requirements around data residency for businesses that need it. And at the same time, these data centers also meet the same security and compliance commitments as the rest of our global cloud. So they are given everything that our global cloud has, plus additional benefits of keeping the data that customers care about in the country. And for that, we've been making contractual commitment, as I mentioned, around Exchange Online, specifically mailbox content, and SharePoint Online for sites and files stored within those sites, plus the files that are uploaded to OneDrive for Business, where this set of data is kept within the market or in that specific region, and we do not carry additional copies of the data outside. Within the market, we have multiple copies, but outside of that particular region, we don't have any additional copies of data.
Let me ask you about that a little bit, because, and John, you made a reference to this as well. We just sometimes describe it as a data center, but help our audience understand, like when we're saying we're opening a data center, it's not just one physical facility, is it?
No, it's not. That's a really, really important point, Chris, that you're making. That's why we use the term region, a data center region. So depending upon the actual country that we're referring to, we have this notion of generally having multiple data centers, usually 3 individual physical data centers in that country. And that's what provides some of that business continuity and disaster recovery capabilities, and ensuring that data is kept there and in a safe way, and obviously offloads a little bit of the work into from one specific physical location. If there's any kind of a problem that occurs, that allows for us to seamlessly keep operations running.
The big news for today, just to put a point on it, is that the doors are open in Qatar, and it certainly is one of many, but it also is indicative of momentum. It's something that we hear a lot about, growth, and certainly I want to get to later with Chris, to focus on your perspective on sustainability and growth in general. Can you help us understand that the strategy that's behind both regional data centers and anything you can share with how the different teams across Microsoft, the product groups and customers alike, get benefit from this expansion?
So you're absolutely right, Mark. Building off of the 16th data center region in Qatar, we actually have announced 13 additional data center regions that will be coming up over the coming years. And then that includes countries such as Poland, Israel, Spain, Italy, Chile, a number of other ones in Asia Pacific, Indonesia as an example. All of these we're building off of customer requirements, and where there's either specific data residency laws that are in place, or where there's a need for industry compliance and customers really need those types of protections. And we work from the beginning when we're even contemplating putting in a data center region. We're working very closely with stakeholders in government, governmental agencies or entities, a lot of times ministries of communications and IT. We're working with large Microsoft partners in that region, as well as the large anchor customers, oftentimes public sector entities themselves, banks, capital markets organizations, healthcare organizations, just to name sort of a few of those. We're working with them to shape that, and of course we're taking into account local NGO stakeholders as well for environmental concerns and ensuring that it's economically benefiting that country as well. So that's just sort of the work we're doing outside with external partners. I'll let Sean talk a little bit about what we do internally with Microsoft.
Thank you, John. So M365 Local Data Center Region Launch is a large cross-Microsoft effort. Almost every team in Microsoft, both in terms of engineering, business, marketing, and legal, is involved to make sure that we provide the best customer experience, something that meets both the service and the customer data residency requirements within that region. Now, specifically where things start is that we start with the data center and networking teams that lay the physical foundation for this new cloud in the market. And that starts a few months prior to when the service actually goes live. For some of these markets, we've been working at it for several months in terms of making sure the DC is ready and the network is ready to support the applications. Post that, we have a layer of foundation of the service that is from M365. Azure itself is a foundational service where we deploy Azure services that establish networking, storage, and compute requirements of both external customers and internally for M365. And on top of that, we layer in the M365 workloads that are deployed on top of this infrastructure to come together and enable us to launch an M365 in the new market. So it's a kind of an all Microsoft inclusive initiative. Is something that requires us to basically bring the entire company together. And we have established significant amount of momentum and learning in terms of what we've done in the last few M365 local data center regions so that we can repeat and scale this out into the new markets.
We talk about opening data center regions in countries as if they're one and the same thing, but it's probably worth reflecting back. We have many countries where we have more than one data center, right? I know we have like the West region out in Quincy, Washington, but that is not the entirety of the United States.
No, you're absolutely right. As a matter of fact, in the U.S., we have far beyond that, right? We have operations in Central region as well as in the Eastern region. And, that's an interesting one. And, and if you even take like our recent launch in Sweden, you have two different locations with multiple data centers in those locations. And that's what's providing a little bit of that business continuity and less latency and things of that nature. And so you're absolutely right that when we're going into a country, and in Australia is a good example as well, where you have multiple data center regions within a single country of Australia. Or similar to how it is in the U.S. as well, so that a customer that's in South Australia can use a particular data center versus a company that's in Northern Australia or the Australian federal government, for that matter, that has specific needs.
And Sean, from our perspective, is that for load balancing? Is it for customer demand? A little bit of both? Like, how do we decide where to go?
The core premises of these data centers is that we keep customer data within that region, and we need to make sure that we are safeguarding that data. And as a result of it, we have multiple copies of data kept across data centers that physically are separated from each other. So in case there is an impact to one, we have additional copy of the data, both in terms of running the service to keep the service running, and also in terms of making sure that we limit data loss to disaster scenarios. So that's the key reasons that we have. And then in terms of how we do this is that, as John was mentioned, the design of these data centers already have this consideration. So as we pick the selection for where the data center is, we go through multiple checklists of items to make sure individual data centers are in the safe location, and then collectively they're in the locations where that we provide that we could get the best of HA and disaster recovery possible for our customers.
So the entire Microsoft cloud is being stood up for what effectively is a unique instance for a country, to meet a lot of their compliance and to give them the services as many as we can offer across Microsoft 365 and of course Azure. We take a lot of internal dependencies on Azure, but to also offer Azure as a service. I can imagine from everything that you both have shared, it's a lot of coordination across a lot of teams, a lot of checkpoints, QA, testing. And when the lights go on, I think one area that we wanted to explore, and John, I heard you say it a little bit just in how you described, standing up some of these, is we have to be a responsible citizen as well. As we move into country and we open up large data centers, if not multiple data centers and locations, maybe first a question to John, and Sean, I know you'll have some input as well. But with this great power that we're offering, both, in our offerings, but to our customers, there's also some important sustainability that we need to focus on. I was hoping that both of you could just give a little insight into, well, why does it matter? How is it that we operationalize and make sure that our impact is a positive, not a negative? But also how we measure that and on a continuous basis, make sure that both our short-term, medium-term, and long-term planning, especially when we think about expansion, doesn't equal disruption.
It's a very good question and something that's driving a lot of Microsoft customers worldwide, which is that data centers consume a lot of power. And one thing that your audience may or may not know is that in general, public cloud is far more efficient from an energy utilization perspective than if they had similar technology sitting in a server room or a data center of their own. So there's some economies of scale there, and it allows us to invest ahead of that to create the most efficient type of center. And of course, your audience is probably familiar with Microsoft's goals around carbon negativity, water positivity, and zero waste. And data centers are one of the core areas that Microsoft is operating on that. And a great example of this is in our most recent launch in Sweden, is that the data center region is completely powered by 100% carbon-free energy, working with a local partner, Vattenfall, to do that, and so that we're constantly operating with 100% sustainable energy, and that's terrific. Of course, there's also zero waste operations that happen there for that data center and many others. And one of the exciting parts of it actually is that it also serves as a circular center. So it's the third circular center in Europe, and it allows Microsoft to vastly extend the life of a server. So a server will typically go down in X amount of time. We're able to extend that useful life of that server for a lot longer period of time and repurpose it. And then when it is finally non-usable anymore, it can be recycled completely. So those are just some examples. And of course, now we're starting to get into how we do backup. Of course, there's always backup power for a data center. Traditionally, data centers have a diesel-powered backup, and we're now using lithium-ion batteries to store power for those backup scenarios so that eventually over time we can phase out any type of diesel power. So it's exciting times, and data centers are really on that front edge of sustainability for sure.
From my point of view, when we look at a new market and a new data center, we are looking to see the location of the data centers, from is it close to population centers so that we can provide the best experience for these customers? Is these locations in a safe place? Does it meet the growth needs of that market? Does it meet the networking requirements of that market? And also, our understanding is that these data centers have a side benefit to generate, help support the economy of those countries. Some of the studies that IDC has done recently, even in the case of Qatar, suggest that we're going to create thousands of jobs just around the data center, both on top of people that are going to build around it and partner communities that are going to extend our capability to meet the local needs. So those are the areas that we're focused on. And I think John did a good job of providing guidance on specifically what we're doing on data center itself.
There's been so much that we've learned over the years of running data centers on behalf of our customers and standing them up and learning and standing up the next one and learning from that. Sean, do you mind just taking us back in the Wayback Machine and just spend a few minutes of your memories and some of the principles and maybe the realities as well as when we stood up our first data center, and then maybe some of those drivers around then what did we do to better maintain business continuity and improve disaster recovery and just the value that the data centers themselves offers to our customers, enough for them to stop doing themselves and move to the Microsoft cloud?
So, initially when we started, say with our Japan data centers, the idea was that we're going to put certain workloads within the country and then make sure it's connected to the global cloud so that customers can get, as I mentioned, both the benefit of local services and the remaining services that are serving those users from our regional data centers. And from implementation, there are really two phases into this design. There's prior to data center getting ready, and once the data center is ready, the engineering work that is involved in getting the data center in the shape that our application teams can establish, build out. So a lot of those processes earlier on was manual. Services would take, initially with Japan, it took several months for us to build that first data center. But we've put a significant amount of investment in automation into these clouds since then, where we've gone from a build out that might take several months to something that takes several weeks from the time where the data centers are ready for our engineers to build. And also we got the better tools and processes in terms of identifying the next set of opportunities, establishing processing, choosing the best data centers that allow us to grow, because one of the challenges with these is that you have to have a good understanding of the demand and growth of that data center, both in terms of space and power and network. And we have improved significantly to the point right now, like I said, we could go from an idea to establish a data center to build out in much faster timelines that we used to have. And architecturally, we have evolved our footprints where we have multiple copies in multiple locations where we could make sure that from HA and DR perspective, be providing adequate services for our customers.
And just to be real clear, when you say HA, I heard that before. I want to make sure our audience knows. That means high availability?
It does, yeah. So basically it means that if given the fact that our service is running across multiple data centers, at the same time, if there was an impact to one of the data center locations, the second data center will pick up those loads and continues to operate as usual. And that provides, business continuity for our customers so that we're not impacting their business by having the service to be down.
Gotcha. So if I were to put it in terms of the intrazone, 99.99% of our episodes won't even compare to this episode. That is our SLA. Is that correct?
That is correct. That is our SLA.
So if we take, from the past, and certainly we've heard a lot about the today's news with Qatar and directionally where we're going with announcements that we've made across other data center regions, what are some other things that we can talk about that if we were to say what's next for data center, whether it's design or meeting customers where they are in ways that they're growing? Jon, how would you market the future of data centers?
It's exciting. We're certainly proud of the work that we've accomplished thus far, the fact that we're certainly a market leader in terms of the commitments as well as the breadth of offerings across the world vis-a-vis our competition in the productivity and collaboration space. Just offering quite a bit more choice than our competition does. But we don't rest on our laurels here at Microsoft, of course. So we're constantly seeking out new ways to add value to regulated enterprise customers, public sector, et cetera, et cetera. One of the areas that we look at a lot is, how do we help multinational organizations effectively manage a myriad of different data residency requirements, since they're not operating in just one country by the very nature of that name, multinational. So that's one of the areas that we're seeking to to put a little more effort into. We already have an offering in market called multi-geo capabilities for Microsoft 365, which helps companies to manage that complexity. But we're also always looking at ways that we can help drive additional workloads in that area and expand that coverage, not just data center coverage, but workload coverage and some of the value-added services that we offer those types of customers.
Sean, is there anything that you can add? Again, not to disclose things that we don't want to have out there just yet, but just from the what's next in your world.
My world is mainly around making sure we can scale so that we can get into new markets faster. Work with our automation teams across the company so that we can land these services so that we could unblock our customer needs into these new countries that we go in. And also something we didn't talk about earlier, which has to do with the fact that once we do launch these data centers, we enable customers that from those specific countries where we launched the data center to opt in to be moved into these data centers. And as of now, that move is seamless. So if there are customers that want to be part of our Qatar data centers that are currently being provisioned or are basically served out of our European data centers, they have an option to select to be moved, and behind the scene with no action from them, we will move that data seamlessly across and we'll notify them once the move has taken place, which gives additional benefit to them and allows our first and best customers to also get the benefit of these local data centers.
I just have this image. I don't even know really what is the best visual for it, but I imagine migration of content into our data centers, the transmission of data back and forth for redundancy, backup, and security. And then, of course, the interaction of people collaborating, leveraging content, downloading it, to open it up in things like Office or other applications, with the different file types. And I just imagine these pipes with just so much data going back and forth and just optimizing and routing. And, it's fascinating. I really my hat's off to you both for making sense of it all. And also saying, yep, we'll do that again because we've got new markets and new customers and, things that we've learned that we can do better. So not only do Chris and I want to thank you for your time today, but thanks for keeping the pipes open. I know I benefited from whenever I even write something as simple as a blog. It's in a data center somewhere, I think Chicago. But thank you for your time and thanks for the work that you do.
Thank you. Thank you for hosting us.
Yeah, thank you from my part as well. Appreciate the opportunity.
So your head is now full of all this data center excellence, the approach that we take, the design, and of course the news of the day, expanding the footprint into multiple regions, now at 16 regions, going on more that is in planning. And it's always great to hear from the experts behind the scenes, Sean and his team and how they approach it from an engineering perspective, and Jon representing how we then make it known, what is available, and of course some of the precedents that behind the availability in each region. So with that, we wanted to get into events that probably will talk a little bit about data centers, but a lot of the content behind, whether it's delivered by Microsoft experts, community experts, or Microsoft MVPs at a variety of conferences, everything is really entangled with how those products and services run in the data center. So keep that in mind. Next event that you go to, know that much of what people present, demo, show, and talk about derives and starts from that data center layer. So to start events, I wanted to first look not too far out into the distant future. September 13th, so in a few weeks, is HR Tech. And this is going to be in Las Vegas at the Mandalay Bay Hotel. We've got a great lineup. A lot of people from the Microsoft Viva team will be representing at HR Tech in our theater, having multiple sessions that are available to learn more about the product, to learn more about a lot of different scenarios, and of course just to dig in and network with some of our experts that will attend. So HR Tech, September 13th through the 16th in Las Vegas, Mandalay Bay Hotel. Next is the Microsoft Power Platform Conference. This is September 20th through the 22nd. There are a few pre-day workshops and post-day workshops as well. This is in person only in Orlando, Florida. The attendance for this has been growing really well from what we have visibility on, and it has some heavy hitters with the way that we'll kick off the conference. We'll have Charles Lamanna kicking off the main keynote, right away followed by Jeff Teeper, who's going to get into how to build collaborative apps, which is really the blend of Microsoft 365 and Power Platform to combine solutions that you can build in the no-code, low-code evolution. But it is a significant conference. You'll have a lot of experience and expertise from Microsoft and the community. They're presenting a lot of breakout sessions, a number of workshops, and of course 4 keynotes, both Charles and Jeff that I mentioned, and towards the end you'll have Scott Hanselman really digging into the low-code, if-some code areas of the Power Platform, and rounding it off with Heather Newman, who really will hit home the establishment of the new community motions in how the Power Platform is outreaching throughout the year. Turning the corner just a few days later in Europe for the European Cloud Summit in Mainz, Germany, September 26th through the 28th. This is highly driven by one of our partner conference program managers. And this broader event always brings in a good crowd, always a great lineup of speakers, starting with keynotes, breakouts, workshops. So if you're local, of course, in the European region and want to attend September 26th to the 28th, just log in. You'll see a link in all of these events in our show notes, and it's a great one to attend, especially if you're in the EU region. Coming back over to the States at that same exact time, September 26th through the 30th in Chicago, Illinois, is the next 365 EduCon Chicago. And there's a great keynote to kick it off with 2 of my peers, Liz Sundet and Kathy Dew, talking about all of the hybrid innovation to kick things off that will lead into really a blueprint of all of what Chicago has to offer during the event. There's also a second keynote all about the Power Platform that's driven by my peer, Jason Himmelstein, and he's working with some of our MVPs, Wes and John, to dive into all things that the Power Platform offers. But another great event, especially if you're in the Chicagoland region, definitely encourage 365 EduCon Chicago, September 26th through the 30th. Next is a virtual event, the Teams 10X. This is, of course, all about Microsoft Teams with people from Microsoft, community, and MVPs logging in for a full 2 days, September 28th through the 29th. One view of what the agenda has, and you'll see that there's pretty much anything you want to learn about Teams, whether it's how to collaborate best with files in Teams, some of the best offerings now through how to set up your meetings and run your meetings, and of course from an IT perspective, how to stand up the environment and manage it out for how you want to take advantage of Teams throughout a lot of different scenarios. Teams X has been a great experience in the past, and I highly encourage that one. September 28th through the 29th, Teams X. Next, I'll spend just a little bit more time now that we have some more information about Microsoft Ignite. It is October 12th through the 14th, 2022, and there's a couple of elements to be really clear. There is still a large footprint of a lot that will be delivered virtually. We think of this as our digital core offering. We also have a footprint at the Seattle Convention Center, which is in downtown Seattle, not too far from the Redmond campus, and that'll have a focus of probably about 3,000 to 3,500 people attending in person, with the unique experience, of course, for an in-person. And then the breadth of it around 6 different regional spotlights that we're calling. And those are in 6 different regions around the world, delivered through that same period of time. So expect that it's going to be a load of content, a lot of great information at the Satya Nadella keynote, down through what we're calling theme sessions that will focus on what our offerings are for modern work, and of course Power Platform, Azure, Windows, anything under the sun that Microsoft has to announce will be delivered through Ignite. So expect it to be a big news cycle, a lot of great new content, new information from our speakers, with a lot of touch points for you in the digital realm. So virtually, of course, there will be a lot of ways to access. So register to get into the digital event. And if you have that ability to be either selected or you get one of the tickets that's available for the Seattle Convention Center, certainly register for that and hope that you get in there. And with the regional spotlights, those are well listed, and hope those are something that you can attend in those different regions. It's a big moment for Microsoft. It's certainly coming up. A lot of the teams are now digging into what are we going to announce, what are we going to show, and having viewed a lot of that across my team, broader team, with Microsoft Viva and Syntex and OneDrive and SharePoint and Stream and Yammer, and the list goes on and on and on. And that's only what I have the small visibility on. There's a lot that the company's preparing for Microsoft Ignite. So definitely put it on your calendar to at least pay attention, if not register to attend, and get in on a lot of the activity October 12th through the 14th coming up soon. At that same time, there's a very localized event in Branson, Missouri called the North American Cloud Summit. And if you're in the Missouri region, definitely worth going to. There are a lot of great speakers, an opening keynote, and I hope to join in virtually to provide a lens in on what we announced during Ignite with time for Q&A. So I'll have a little role to play for the North American Cloud Summit. But that's also during that same time frame, October 12th through the 14th in Branson, Missouri. And last one that we wanted to mention for this episode is the South Coast Summit. This is October 14th through the 15th at the Aegis Bowl in Southampton, United Kingdom. So if you're in the UK region, definitely encourage you to look into the South Coast Summit. It'll be a real topical focus on a real breadth of content within Microsoft 365, Power Platform, and a lot of the focus on both business users and IT. It's got a great lineup. All the links, again, for all of these events will be in the show notes and in the corresponding blog, so you can click in, review these events, and hopefully attend if it makes sense for you, both in the focus that they provide and, of course, the location, even if it's virtual. But a lot more now in person, and hopefully there's one close to you so you can get great content, but also start to plug in the valuable networking and in-person touch. That's it with events. We hope that if you have an event that we haven't listed that you think would be one that we should mention on the Intrazone, please send it to us so that we know about the event. And of course, send us a little information about the event so we can speak to it appropriately. We want to thank our guests, Sean Emam and Jon Farmer, for being on the show and, of course, for giving us a peek behind the data center curtain. We encourage you to check out our show page for links to all that was discussed today and more. Just go to aka.ms/theintrazone. Send us your questions and feedback for the SharePoint teams. You can reach us via email at theintrazone@microsoft.com, or send us a tweet or a reply or anything, even a DM on Twitter at SharePoint, at mcashman, and at cmcnulty2000. Your voice and your opinion make it worthwhile always, and of course it helps the podcast grow. So if you have a moment, please rate and review, tell all your friends, not only about the data center excellence, but about the Intrazone. You can follow this show wherever you get your favorite tech podcasts. We appreciate you listening. We are your hosts, Mark Cashman and Chris McNulty, and this has been The Intrazone, a show about the Microsoft 365 sustainable and scaled out worldwide with redundancy intelligent intranet.